My name is Gail Mills. I'm 28 years old. And this is the story of how my own brother and his fiancée tried to manipulate me out of everything my grandfather left behind, until one message destroyed it all. For as long as I can remember, I've been the background character in my own family. My parents, Cheryl and Martin Mills, run a charming little bakery in the suburbs of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Mills and Crumbs. Locals rave about the buttery pastries and cinnamon rolls, but no one ever talks about the girl who grew up behind the counter, flour on her cheeks, finishing homework under dim lights while others played. That was me. The dependable one. The invisible one. The one who didn't need attention because I had it all together. My younger brother, Ryan, 2 years my junior, was different. Always was. He could fail a test, and it was just a bad week. He could lose a job and Mom would whisper about how the market's so unfair these days. But me? When I earned a full-ride scholarship to Temple University, I got a pat on the back and, well, of course she did. No celebration. No proud tears. Just expectation. Gail always finds a way. So, I stopped looking for praise. I poured myself into school, then work. I graduated without debt, started my marketing job at a rising interior design firm, and rented a small but sun-filled apartment downtown. Quiet. Orderly. Mine. The only person who really saw me, was my grandfather, Gerald Mills. My dad's father. A quiet man with a kind voice and sharper instincts than anyone realized. When I was 8, he gave me a little leather-bound notebook and told me, "Gail, the world talks loud. If you don't write your truth, they'll write it for you." I've kept that notebook ever since. When he passed away 3 years ago, I thought I'd lost the only person who ever got me. But then came the reading of his will. He had left me a trust fund. Not a fortune, but enough to start my own business one day or buy a modest home. There were conditions. I couldn't access it until I turned 31, and only for specific uses: housing, education, or starting a business. No fancy cars. No designer nonsense. Just the kind of investment Grandpa believed in. Steady, honest growth. I wept that night not because of the money, but because even in death, Grandpa was still building doors for me. Quietly. Privately. Like he always had. For a while, things were peaceful. Until Ryan got engaged. Her name was Kelsey. Picture perfect. Instagram filter flawless. She had a way of walking into a room and making everyone feel like they were part of something magical. My mom was instantly smitten. My dad said she had that sparkle. Even the bakery staff started referring to her as future Mrs. Mills, like it was already stitched onto the apron. I tried to be happy for them. I really did. But then came the dinner. It was a cozy night at my parents' place. My mom had made her famous roast chicken, and the dining room buzzed with wine-fueled toasts and laughter. Kelsey sat across from me, her makeup flawless, her smile practiced. And then, as if she were commenting on the weather, she said it. "So, Gail, I heard your grandfather left you a little something. Have you ever thought about helping Ryan with the wedding? I mean, it's such a special moment, right?" The room went still, at least for me. I smiled tightly. "Yes, he did. But I can't access it yet. And, even if I could, I have plans for it." Her smile didn't budge. But her eyes, they sharpened, just for a split second. "Oh, of course. I just thought, family helping family. Makes the big day more magical." Nobody else flinched. My parents chuckled softly and kept sipping their wine. But something inside me twisted. That wasn't a question. It was a test shot. A week later, it escalated. We were at my uncle's backyard barbecue, sunlight streaming through the oaks. Kids ran barefoot in the grass and adults lounged in fold-up chairs. Kelsey slid her seat next to mine like we were old friends. "I don't mean to push," she said, eyes wide with innocence, "but the budget's tight. Ryan mentioned you're doing well. I just thought maybe, if you chipped in even a little, it'd really help." I didn't look at her. I watched the kids playing instead. "The trust isn't mine yet. And even when it is, I won't be using it for someone else's wedding. There it was. Plain and simple. Her voice dropped just slightly. I get it. You've always been the serious one. But weddings are once in a lifetime. Doesn't it feel good to help your own brother? That word own landed like a slap. I turned to face her. It would feel better if you respected boundaries. She blinked. I didn't mean anything. I stood. Excuse me. That night, I got a message from Mom. Kelsey spoke with me. She's just worried about Ryan. Try to be kind, okay? Kind? I had spent 28 years being too kind, too quiet, too accommodating. And now kindness was being used as a weapon. Still, I gave it one more chance. Ryan invited me to a brunch Kelsey was hosting. She wants to get to know you better, he said. I arrived 5 minutes late to a polished French-style cafe, only to find Kelsey seated with 3 of her girlfriends, all dressed like they were about to attend a bridal runway show. They smiled too wide. Their perfume was overwhelming. The conversation started light, but within 10 minutes, one of them casually said, if I had a trust fund like Gail's, I'd use it to help family. No question. Another chimed in, exactly. Weddings are sacred. What's mine is yours, right? I set my mimosa down slowly. Looked at Kelsey. Thanks for the breakfast. But if this was a setup, I'll pass. She blinked. Gail, I didn't ask them to. No need to pretend. I stood. Just don't mistake my silence for weakness again. That evening, Ryan called. She's just overwhelmed. Please don't fight. Ryan, I've been clear. I have my plans. The money isn't yours. Period. He hesitated. But you're always the generous one. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about love. It was about leverage. And they thought I'd fold. But they didn't know me. Not really. Not yet. The next few weeks felt like walking through a maze where every path led to guilt. Kelsey had dropped the direct questions, but not the game. Instead of asking me to help pay for the wedding, she shifted tactics. She smiled more. She acted sweeter. But every compliment came with a sting underneath. At Grandma Millie's birthday dinner, while everyone gathered around the table for pumpkin pie, Kelsey set her fork down delicately and said, "It's just such a blessing when someone in the family is in a position to help others chase their dreams." Her voice was light, casual, but her eyes flicked to mine for the briefest second. No one said anything, but I felt it. The air thickened like steam over boiling water. Another time, during a small gathering to look at wedding venue samples, Kelsey let her fingers rest on a page with a grand crystal chandelier and whispered, "We just fell in love with this one. But dreams cost, don't they?" Then she laughed and passed the catalog to my mom like it was nothing. At first, I ignored it. But ignoring something doesn't mean it disappears. It festers. And the worst part? Ryan had started parroting her words. One night, he called again. "I just feel like, if we're really family, we should be able to support each other." I mean, that's what Grandpa would have wanted. My throat tightened. Grandpa wanted me to use that money for me. He trusted me to make decisions with it, not hand it out like candy. I'm not saying all of it. Just, what if we met in the middle? You don't meet in the middle over someone else's inheritance, Ryan. That's not compromise. That's manipulation. He didn't respond. Just hung up quietly. Even my parents began to lean in. One afternoon, while helping Mom prep dough at the bakery, she said, "I know this is uncomfortable, but sometimes keeping peace in the family means giving a little. Your brother's under a lot of pressure." I wiped flour off my hands. "I've given my whole life, Mom. My weekends, my help, my silence. But this? This was Grandpa's trust. Meant for a future I've worked hard to build." She didn't respond. Just kept kneading the dough, her mouth pressed into a line. And my father, always the quiet one, finally broke his silence too. "You're a good person, Gail," he said after dinner one evening, staring into his coffee mug. But responsibility isn't just about doing things right. It's about being there when others need you. The words hit hard, not because they were cruel, but because they made it sound like I wasn't already there. As if all those years being the dependable, quiet daughter meant nothing now that I wasn't willing to hand over money I hadn't even touched. I felt like I was being cornered with velvet gloves. That night, I opened my safe and pulled out the letter Grandpa had written me before he passed. I'd read it a dozen times, but this time, I clung to every word. If the day comes when people don't understand your choices, trust your gut. I left you this fund because I believed you'd know what to do when the time came, not out of guilt, but out of strength. His words wrapped around me like armor. I wasn't being cold. I was protecting the future he helped me build. But then came the moment I'll never forget. I stopped by my parents' house on a Saturday to grab some old boxes from the garage. When I walked into the living room, I saw Kelsey and my mother sitting together, sipping tea like best friends in a Hallmark movie. Kelsey stood up and faced me. "I think it's time we had a real conversation," she said, her tone no longer sugar-coated. I froze. "I've tried to be patient," she went on, "but I'm really disappointed. You have the power to help us begin our life right, and instead, you're holding back for what? Pride?" My mother said nothing, just stared down into her teacup like it was the only thing anchoring her to the earth. I exhaled. Slow. Controlled. "You're calling me selfish? For not giving you money I haven't even touched?" Kelsey's arms crossed. "It's not selfishness. It's just a lack of empathy. If the roles were reversed." "They're not," I snapped. "And this money isn't a community fund. It's a trust left to me. For me. Because Grandpa believed in me." Kelsey's eyes didn't flinch. "You really won't help at all?" "No," I said. "Not with money. And not with any more silence either." I turned and walked out. 3 days later, Ryan texted me and asked to meet for lunch. "Just you and me," he promised. But when I walked into the Mexican restaurant near my office, there she was. Kelsey, with a notebook in her lap like she was pitching me a business plan. "You made it," she smiled. "We already ordered." I didn't sit. "What is this?" "We've talked it through," she said calmly. "We figured, maybe you give half the trust fund. Just half. That way, everyone wins." I blinked. "You're asking me to split in half money I can't even legally touch yet?" She nodded, like it made perfect sense. I sat down. Slowly. "Thanks for planning my future for me." "But the answer's still no." Kelsey frowned. "You really won't compromise?" "Not even a little." I stared straight into her eyes. "I don't owe compromises to people who've spent weeks emotionally cornering me." Ryan sighed. "I thought you were the one who cared about family." I felt the words burn as they left my mouth. "And I thought you were my brother." I walked out, and I knew the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. After that lunch, I knew the gloves were off. Kelsey wasn't hiding behind fake kindness anymore. Ryan had thrown away the last bit of sibling trust we had. And my parents, well, their silence said everything. But I still wasn't ready for what came next. It was a Wednesday when I got the call. My mom's voice was calm, careful. "We'd like you to come over Friday evening. Just to talk. The whole family will be there." I hesitated. "Is this about the trust?" She paused. "We just want to clear the air." Clear the air. That phrase had never sounded more loaded. When I arrived that evening, the dining room table was set, not with dinner, but with papers, water glasses, and tight smiles. My dad sat at the head of the table, hands folded. My mom next to him, eyes cast down. Ryan and Kelsey sat together on the far side, her hand on his like a silent reinforcement. I stood in the doorway, not moving further in. "What is this?" My dad cleared his throat. "We want to have a family conversation. A respectful one." I looked at each of them. No one met my eyes. Except Kelsey. "We understand the trust fund isn't accessible yet," she began, her voice measured. "But that doesn't mean we can't plan. If you could just commit to helping, even a portion, it would relieve so much tension." My mom nodded. "It would show you care. That you support your brother's future." Ryan added, "You're in control of everything. One decision, Gail." That's all it takes. I laughed, quiet, bitter. One decision to give up something I've waited my whole life for? Kelsey leaned forward. It's not giving up. It's sharing. That's what families do. I looked at my parents. Did any of you stop to ask how I'm doing? How it feels to be pressured like this? Silence. Did anyone ask how it feels to be called selfish for honoring Grandpa's wishes? Still nothing. That's what I thought. I stood, my chair screeching softly against the hardwood floor. If this is what you call family, maybe I don't need to be part of it. And I walked out. But that wasn't the end. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, not angry anymore, just clear. For years, I'd held onto the idea that if I worked hard, stayed quiet, and kept the peace, I'd be respected. That they'd finally see me. But all I'd done was teach them how to ignore my boundaries. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to say no anymore. I was going to make sure they couldn't touch me, even if they tried. I pulled out my laptop and searched estate and family harassment attorney near Harrisburg. That's how I found Melanie Grant. She was in her early 40s, firm handshake, no-nonsense eyes. Her office smelled like mint tea and leather-bound legal books. She listened as I laid everything out. Every manipulation. Every veiled threat. The notebook at brunch. The family meeting. Even the texts from Kelsey's friends, saying things like, she's just hoarding it out of pride, and if she really loved Ryan, she'd help. When I finished, Melanie leaned back, tapping her pen on the desk. This is no longer just family tension, she said. This is a campaign of coercion. And it's actionable. I stared. You mean illegally? Yes. We'll start with a cease and desist letter. If they keep pushing, we escalate. I exhaled, the air shaking in my lungs. And in the meantime? I asked. She slid a folder across the desk. Document everything. Texts, emails, recordings. And don't meet with them alone again. It felt surreal. I never imagined I'd be in a lawyer's office preparing a case against my own family. But then again, I never imagined they'd try to take what wasn't theirs either. 3 days later, before I could even send the letter, things exploded. I got a message from my old college roommate, Tasha. Girl, is Kelsey subtweeting you? You need to see her story. My stomach dropped. I opened Instagram. There it was, Kelsey's story, a series of vague but piercing captions over sunset selfies and wedding inspo. Some people have money but no heart. Family isn't about blood. It's about support. Being generous isn't about when you can. It's about if you want to. The comments were even worse. Her friends chiming in with sympathy, tagging her in gifs about toxic relatives and unsupportive sisters-in-law. And even though she didn't say my name, everyone knew. I sent screenshots to Melanie. She replied within minutes. Perfect. Don't respond. I'll finalize the letter today. But Kelsey wasn't finished. The next morning, my HR director pulled me into his office. Hey, Gail, he said, his face tense. We got a call. Someone posing as a relative asked for your salary information. Said it was urgent for family financial planning. My heart sank. Do you know who it was? No name. Woman's voice. But too many questions. We didn't share anything, obviously. My breath caught. My fingers tightened around my purse strap. It had to be her. That night, Melanie filed the cease and desist. Her message was direct. Any further attempts to access Gail Mills' private, personal, or financial information would be considered harassment and treated accordingly. I didn't say anything to my family. I didn't need to, because karma was already getting ready. And it arrived sooner than I ever expected. It was a Monday morning, one of those gray, sleepy starts to the week when even the coffee felt reluctant. I had just gotten to work, holding a warm paper cup in one hand, my phone in the other, when the family group chat, normally reserved for bakery photos and random holiday memes, lit up with more notifications than I'd seen in months. I nearly ignored it. Then I saw the first message. From Ryan. Delilah, I can't believe you sent that stuff to your friends. You called Gail a walking safe and said Mom and Dad would pressure her into giving in. Are you serious right now? My chest went still. I reread it 3 times. Then came the screenshots. Texts. From Kelsey. In a group chat titled Bride Squad. Just let Cheryl and Martin do their thing. Gail will crack soon enough. She's not used to being cornered. Brandon's worried, but I'm not. Half that trust fund will be my wedding gift. Once the extended family chimes in, she'll fold. And then the final blow. Pretending to respect Gail is exhausting, but it works. She loves being treated kindly, so I fake it. No big deal. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just stood there reading those words, stunned into silence while the office buzzed around me like nothing had changed. But something had. Everything had. In the chat, silence lingered like fog. Then my mother finally chimed in. Kelsey, what is this about? Then Dad. Kelsey, are these real? No response. Not for a full minute. Then came her reply. You're all misunderstanding. I was just venting to close friends. Those messages don't reflect how I really feel. I was just stressed. The damage was done. I didn't respond. I just quietly left the group chat. I didn't want explanations. I didn't want apologies. What I wanted was distance. That night, Ryan called me. I debated not answering, but curiosity, or maybe something deeper, pushed my thumb over the green icon. His voice was shaky. Gail, I'm sorry. I saw the messages when Kelsey left her phone charging on the kitchen counter. I didn't mean to blow everything up like that. My hands were shaking. I meant to send it just to her. But I hit the wrong button. There it was. The accidental truth bomb that no one could deny. I didn't know she felt that way, he continued. I thought she was just stressed. But after reading what she wrote, he trailed off. I finally spoke, voice low and steady. I warned you, Ryan. I warned you more than once. I know. I thought you were just holding onto the money, not that you were being hurt, manipulated. I didn't see it. I let out a dry, bitter laugh. What I was protecting, Ryan, wasn't just the trust. It was my self-respect. The money? That's something Kelsey was never worthy of touching. There was nothing more to say. Over the next few days, the fallout rippled through the family like an earthquake whose aftershocks just kept coming. Kelsey went into PR mode, calling every relative she could, spinning her story like a tired publicist in damage control. It was just a joke, she claimed. Gail is taking everything out of context. But no one was buying it, especially not after they'd seen the actual words. No context could soften those messages. Aunt Caroline, who had once messaged me privately to be more understanding, sent me a long apology. I was wrong. I didn't know what they were saying behind your back. A cousin who had publicly liked Kelsey's post about selfish family members quietly unliked it and sent me a message. I feel stupid. I trusted the wrong person. You didn't deserve any of this. I never asked for revenge. I never sought to humiliate anyone. But the truth has a way of boiling to the surface, even when no one wants to look at it. Kelsey disappeared from family events. Her Instagram, once full of wedding countdowns and polished couple photos, went dark. The ring disappeared from her finger. Her name stopped coming up at family dinners. It was like she had never existed. And my parents? They changed not in words, but in manner. They stopped asking about the wedding. Stopped trying to guilt me. Their glances softened. Their questions turned more neutral. One Sunday, I stopped by the bakery to pick up some croissants and found my mom quietly boxing up a batch of ginger cookies, my favorite, the ones she hadn't made since I was a kid because they take too much time. She handed the box to me without saying a word. I looked at her. I don't need you to undo everything, I said gently. I just needed someone to believe I wasn't wrong. She nodded, voice barely above a whisper. I understand, and I'm proud of you. For standing up, for knowing when to say no. I never learned how to do that. I didn't cry. I just said, thank you. That was enough. And Ryan? He sent one more message 3 days later. I've ended things with Kelsey. I'm starting therapy. I need to figure out why I let it go this far. I stared at the message for a long time. Not angry. Not gloating. Just exhausted. This wasn't the story I ever wanted to tell, but it's the one I lived. And maybe now I can finally turn the page. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, thick with the weight of everything unsaid for years. But for the first time, that silence didn't scare me. It felt earned. I hadn't burned the bridge. They had. And now they were standing at the edge, staring at the charred remains, finally realizing I wasn't the one who needed to rebuild anything. They were. Kelsey's disappearance was swift and absolute. No more dinners. No more Instagram inspirations. No more subtle digs across holiday tables. She faded like a rumor no one wanted to believe they ever heard. Some said she moved back in with her parents. Others whispered that she was trying to save face at work. I didn't care. What mattered was that the truth had cut clean through her performance, and everyone had seen it. And still, I didn't feel triumphant. Just free. My parents shifted in the quietest of ways. My dad, who used to nod silently while guilt was piled on my shoulders, started asking about my job. He sent me articles about market trends. Might be useful when you open that shop, he'd say, like it had been his idea all along. My mom stopped tiptoeing around me. She started listening, not just responding. It was small, but the change was real. And Ryan? He kept reaching out, less with guilt, more with something resembling humility. One morning, he texted, I've been reading about financial literacy. Thinking of going back to school. Do you think I'd be any good at that? I stared at the message for a long time. That wasn't the old Ryan. That wasn't the Ryan who stood by while his fiancée tore me apart behind a smile. It was the Ryan I remembered from childhood. The kid who used to call me Super Sis when I helped him with math. The kid who once defended me in middle school after a girl made fun of my clothes. Maybe therapy was doing something. Maybe he was trying to find the pieces of himself he had buried under someone else's approval. I didn't reply right away. But eventually I did. Start where you are. Learn what you didn't. I think Grandpa would be proud. Because I realized something important. Forgiveness doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it comes in small, deliberate steps. But that didn't mean I forgot. Or that I opened my arms and let them all back in. No. I changed too. I began setting boundaries, ones that weren't negotiable. I stopped answering every family message right away. I no longer showed up to every birthday dinner, especially if the invite felt more like obligation than affection. I stopped explaining myself. For the first time, I started living my life without asking for anyone's permission. And the trust fund? It still sat there, untouched. I could feel the pressure around it dissolve after the explosion with Kelsey, but I kept my grip tight not because I was afraid it would be taken, but because I'd finally understood what it symbolized. It wasn't just money. It was my grandfather's belief in me. And that belief deserved to be honored by someone who would never weaponize it. Some days, I thought about how I might use it. A tiny coffee and bookshop on the corner of Chestnut and 3rd Street, filled with vintage chairs and handwritten notes tucked into used novels. Or maybe that master's degree in nonprofit marketing I kept putting off. Or maybe nothing yet. Maybe just holding it was enough for now. One early autumn morning, I found myself standing on the balcony of my apartment with a hot mug between my palms and the wind threading through my hair. The trees were just starting to turn. The city buzzed below, but up here it was calm. And for once, so was I. No more pleasing everyone. No more pretending I wasn't tired. No more letting silence be mistaken for surrender. That's the thing about people like me, people who were taught to be responsible from birth. Everyone assumes you'll always be there. Until you stop being convenient. Then you become the problem. But I wasn't the problem. I was the mirror. I made them see themselves. And they didn't like what stared back. The truth? It always shows up. Maybe not when you want it. Maybe not how you expect it. But it shows. I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to beg. I didn't even have to fight dirty. I just stood still long enough for their lies to trip over themselves. And when the dust settled, I was still here. Intact. Clear-eyed. Free. The days after the family fallout felt like walking through a world that had suddenly been put on mute. No more calls. No more pressure. Just silence. But it wasn't empty anymore. It was peace. I didn't realize how loud my life had been until the noise stopped. How every family dinner, every passive-aggressive text, every pointed suggestion had been stealing air from my lungs. Now I could breathe. I went back to work with a lighter heart. I poured myself into my projects. I met up with old friends I'd neglected while juggling everyone else's needs. I took long walks after dinner. I even bought myself a sketchbook, like the one Grandpa had given me when I was little. I hadn't drawn anything in years, but now I filled page after page, quietly reclaiming pieces of myself that had gone missing. Then one afternoon, I got a knock on my apartment door. It was Ryan. No warning, no text, just him, standing in the hallway with his hands in his jacket pockets and dark circles under his eyes. "I'm not here to talk about the trust," he said before I could even open my mouth. I wanted to look you in the eye and say I'm sorry. I stared at him. Not coldly. Just waiting. "I should have defended you," he said, his voice cracking. "I let her manipulate me. I let her turn me into someone I didn't even recognize. And you kept trying to warn me, and I didn't listen." I leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. "You didn't just not listen, Ryan. You chose her lies over my truth." Repeatedly. He nodded. "I know. I really do." There was a long silence. Then I said, "Why now?" His mouth twisted into something like shame. "I read the letter Grandpa left me. It wasn't about money or instructions. Just one line. Don't betray the people who love you quietly." I swallowed hard. That sounded like Grandpa. Gentle, but sharp where it counted. Ryan shifted, uncomfortable. "I'm not asking to be let back in. I know that's something I have to earn. I just want you to know I'm trying. I started therapy. I'm cutting ties with the people who encouraged me to see you as an obstacle instead of a sister." I nodded. Not forgiving. Not forgetting. Just acknowledging the step. "I hope you keep going," I said. He gave a small, tired smile. "Me too." Then he left. I closed the door, leaned against it, and felt something loosen in my chest, not release. Not relief. But a tiny crack of hope. Maybe people really could change. But I didn't build my life waiting for people to become who I needed. I had learned that the hard way. Now, I was done adjusting my boundaries for other people's comfort. I started journaling again. At first, it was messy, more scribbles than sentences. But over time, the words came. Stories, memories, goals. Dreams I'd shelved because they didn't fit into anyone else's plan. Like the coffee and bookstore idea. It had always felt like a someday fantasy. But now, it started to feel like something more. I visited neighborhoods, walked past empty storefronts, took photos of cozy corners I liked, sat in cafes and watched how the baristas moved, how the regulars talked. I even drafted a business plan, just for myself. No pressure. No deadline. Just possibility. I also opened a new bank account. Not because I was touching the trust fund, but because I wanted to start a separate fund. Something I built myself, dollar by dollar. Something that reminded me I wasn't just the granddaughter of a man who believed in me, I was a woman who believed in herself. It felt good. Stronger than revenge. Stronger than silence. It felt like power. Not the kind that shouts. The kind that stays rooted while the storm passes. The kind that doesn't explain itself anymore. And my parents? They didn't push. They didn't apologize, either, not in the way I used to hope they would. But they changed in small, quiet ways. One night, my mom texted me a photo of a page from a business magazine. "Thought you'd like this." It's about starting a community-centered coffee space. Cool idea. No guilt. No questions. Just support. My dad, in his own way, started leaving voice messages instead of calling. Just short ones. That TED Talk on small business funding you mentioned. Watched it. You were right. It was brilliant. Your ginger cookies? I think I finally got the recipe close. Don't tell your mother I cheated and used store-bought dough last time. They were trying. And while I didn't rush to call them back, I let those messages sit there. Like seeds. Maybe one day, they'd grow into something better. But until then, I was focused on myself. Not out of bitterness. Out of clarity. I had spent most of my life being the strong one, the reliable one, the she'll-be-fine one. But now? Now, I was just Gail Mills. A woman who knew what she stood for. A woman who had been pushed to the edge and didn't fall. She stood taller. A woman who had finally, blessedly, learned how to say no without apologizing for it. And that was worth everything. It was the morning of my 31st birthday. I sat alone in my small kitchen, sunlight pouring through the windows, my favorite mug in hand, one Grandpa had given me when I was 16, with the words, "Do things your way, even if they don't clap." The ceramic had a chip on the rim now, but I still reached for it every morning. Because that was him. Quiet, firm, and always believing in the long game. And now, the wait was over. The trust fund was finally mine to access. I stared at the folder on the table, the final paperwork Melanie had emailed me the day before. All I had to do was sign and submit it. The funds would be released within the week. Just like that. And yet I didn't rush to pick up the pen. Not because I was scared, but because I wasn't desperate anymore. I had lived an entire life without touching that money. I had built stability on my own terms. And even when I was being cornered by the people who should have protected me, I had never once compromised who I was for peace. That alone was worth more than anything locked in a trust account. But this was more than a signature now. It was a choice. I opened the envelope Grandpa had left with the original legal documents. Inside, tucked between the typed pages, was a short note, his handwriting just a little shakier than usual. "Gail, when the time comes, you won't need this money. That's why I left it for you. Because you'd never ask. You'd never feel entitled. And that makes you the only one who deserves it. Use it when you're ready. Not for them. Not for me. For you." I read it once. Then again. And then I signed the paper. Because I wasn't doing it to prove anything. I was doing it because I was ready. 2 months later, the sign went up. 3rd Street Ink and Brew. A cozy space on the corner, just like I had imagined. Brick walls lined with second-hand books. Handwritten quotes tucked into coffee sleeves. A small corner for local art. A quiet back table reserved for a free community writers' circle every Thursday night. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Built from years of restraint, discipline, hurt, and finally, healing. Ryan showed up the first weekend we opened. He didn't make a scene. Just walked in, brows raised, impressed. "Wow," he said, turning slowly. "You really did it." I nodded. "Yeah, I did." He bought a coffee, left a generous tip. Then, before walking out, he said something I'll never forget. "Gail, thank you for not letting me ruin this." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. My parents came the following weekend. My dad lingered near the vinyl record player I kept running low in the corner. My mom asked too many questions about the espresso machine, then offered to help bake scones for Sundays. I told her maybe, eventually. There were still wounds. Still gaps. But now they came with space. Space I wasn't afraid to claim. And Delilah? Gone. Out of sight. Out of story. Last I heard, she moved to another state. No wedding. No apologies. But I didn't need either. She taught me what I needed to know, that boundaries are not punishments, they are survival. And now, I don't answer messages that begin with guilt. I don't entertain "we're just worried" or "can you do one little favor?" I don't stretch myself thinner to make others more comfortable. Because the thing about dignity is, it's quiet. It doesn't announce itself. But when you've had to fight for it, you never let it go again. Sometimes, customers come in and ask how I started the business. I just smile and say, a little luck. And a lot of lessons. Because the real story? It's not about money. It's about becoming the kind of person who never has to beg to be seen again. The kind of person who walks into a room knowing she doesn't owe anyone an explanation. The kind of person who, when faced with pressure, manipulation, or betrayal, doesn't break. She stands. And sometimes, that quiet defiance? That's the loudest kind of revenge there is. So, if you're listening to this thinking, that's me, then hear me when I say this. You don't owe anyone access to the parts of you they refuse to protect. You don't owe them your peace. You only owe yourself the truth. And when you honor that, everything else falls into place. Gail Mills didn't win because she fought harder. She won because she refused to be broken. Her story isn't just about family or money. It's about knowing your worth even when others try to put a price tag on it. If you've ever been pushed to the edge by the people who should have loved you most, you're not alone. And like Gail, you don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is simply say no and mean it. Thanks for watching Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, raw, and inspiring stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Gail's shoes?